Chances are if you're a homeowner or rent a home, you most likely have an underground sprinkler system. While the sprinkler system may be good, one thing that always is lacking, at least in my mind, is the controller, which is what is the brains of your sprinkler system. While most sprinkler system controllers are super clunky, inefficient, and are just a pain in the butt to work with, a lot of the time they don't even work correctly in my experience. Never fear, there's a smarter way to take care of your lawn and water your plants. Enter the Rachio 3 Smart Sprinkler System Controller. The Rachio 3 series Smart Sprinkler line of controllers makes watering easy and foolproof. Installation is a breeze, and automatic irrigation schedules help save you time, money, and water. The system easily connects to many of your smart home devices, including your iPhone and or tablets, and has dual band Wi-Fi built in, so it's easy to set up. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the Rachio 3 system series of controllers, so stay tuned. Rachio sells two different smart sprinkler controllers, the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E. I'm going to break down the differences between each of them, but in case you want to see a more in-depth breakdown, visit the link down below in the video description and also linked right below me right now. It's pro.rachio.com/compare if you have any questions. I'm going to first dive into the Rachio 3. Now the Rachio 3 has two different configurations, the 8 zone coming in at a price point of $229 and the 16 zone, which comes in at a price point of $279. Now if those prices are a little bit out of whack for you and you need to be able to buy something that is a little bit less expensive, then Rachio has you covered there as well. So Rachio recently, in the last few months in fact, came out with the Rachio 3E controller. The Rachio 3E controller comes in at a price point of only $149. The Rachio 3E controller is also a 8-zone controller, and it has virtually almost the same features as the Rachio 3 does. There are a few key differences which I will mention a little bit later on in this video. Rachio also recently has gotten into the market of trying to improve your lawn's overall health, not with just water products, but also with a smart water plan, a fertilizer plan that is. So the Rachio Thrive system is a actual lawn care subscription that you can get from Rachio, which starts at $169 a year. If you go out and visit their website, you can actually go and look and see and map out your yard, and it will actually give you a full detailed plan that shows you how much fertilizer you need to apply, and they send it to you on a monthly basis and tell you when to apply it. Now this plan does start at $169 a year. I actually went out to the Rachio website and did it for my yard. My yard is only about 17 or 1800 square feet of actual lawn, and it would have run me a little over $200 a year. Now, do I think that's worth it or not? I'll leave that judgment up to you guys to decide. I'm not really going to go too much more into Rachio Thrive today. This video is really going to be mainly focused on the Rachio 3 series controller systems. So upon ordering a Rachio controller system, in the box you'll receive the Rachio 3 or the Rachio 3E Smart Sprinkler Controller System, a 6-foot power supply cord, mounting hardware, and a quick start guide. Installation could not be easier. Literally all you have to do is turn off the power to your circuit breaker box for the circuit that your garage runs on. You're able to then take your old controller off the wall. They walk you through again in this step-by-step guide and show you how to easily install your new controller, and it shows you how to hook it up to your internet and get into the app. So I'm not going to be going into a ton of details today necessarily on the installation of the Rachio, but more focusing on the app and the capabilities of what it can do. Before I dive into the app, I do want to point out some differences, some key differences that is between the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E. For anyone who's wondering, they finally have posted a comparison out on their website, but it's not under the standard web address. Again, I will link it down below and put it down below me here. It's pro.rachio.com/compare. So they do have a comparison table on their pro installers type of page, but they do not have any sort of comparison out on their normal website. It is kind of buried. They are apparently working on a more consumer side based comparison table, so it'll be easier for you guys to be able to decide, do I need the 3 or do I need the 3E? So now I've talked a little bit about the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E, the price points. I want to get into a little bit more in-depth conversation on what the differences are between the two products. I'm not actually going to talk about all the key differences between the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E series of controllers. I am going to touch base on a few important ones, which I think, in my opinion at least, would help me make a decision as to, do I want the 3 or the 3E? The first key difference I want to point out between the 3E and the 3 controller is the fact that it does not have the Weather Intelligence Plus. What does Weather Intelligence Plus mean exactly? Basically, in a nutshell, it means the Rachio 3E can connect to only about 30,000 weather stations globally to help predict and forecast if it should water or skip watering schedules. However, the Rachio 3 can connect to over 270,000 weather stations globally and also connects to satellite and radar data. So this can be helpful if you're wanting a more accurate watering schedule, or if you're a weather nut like myself and want to be able to connect to their backyard weather station for your actual watering patterns on your Rachio 3 controller. So if hyper local weather data or super accurate weather data isn't necessarily a thing on your list like it was on mine, definitely go for the Rachio 3E. But again, if you're wanting that extra capability of being able to hook into additional weather data and weather services for a better and more accurate and precise watering schedule, then definitely go with the Rachio 3. Another couple key differences I want to point out between the two controllers is that the Flex daily schedule is not included in the 3E while it is included in the 3. This means that the Rachio 3E is limited to just doing monthly flex schedules or manual watering. That, again, this means that it's not going to change your schedules, or you don't have the ability to change your schedules on a daily basis like the 3 controller has. The last difference I want to point out between the 3 and the 3E is the fact that the 3E is not compatible with Apple HomeKit. This means it does not integrate as well into necessarily all home automation applications, that is. So Apple has their own what's called HomeKit app, which basically makes it so you can integrate like stuff like lights and smart thermostats, and of course now your Rachio 3 controller into it, so you can easily control all your smart devices from one centralized app. So again, that is another key difference. If you're looking for that capability, great. If you just are fine with using the Rachio app and not having full HomeKit integration with the Apple HomeKit app, then go for the 3E, definitely. Now I've touched base on what the key differences are between the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E controller. I want to get into the Rachio app a little bit and show you guys how it works and how to best make use of it. Before I get into the Rachio app and showing you guys around a little bit of what the capabilities are in it, I want to briefly touch base that there are 5 main tabs in the Rachio app. There is the Home tab, the Zones tab, the Calendar tab, the Thrive tab, and then the More tab. The More tab contains some stuff like schedules, watering history, shared access, and what the usage of your system is. Now let's jump into the app and I'll show you guys around a little bit and the capabilities and how to set up your watering schedules. So first off, we're gonna open up the Rachio app. And once you're inside the Rachio app, it is going to take you into your main or default controller. Now your main or default controller might vary depending upon if you have multiple controllers. Most people probably won't, but in case you do, I believe you can change the default controller, which one loads up in your app itself. What I want to show you here is how you access that page in case you do need to change the controller, which controller you're connecting to, that is. So up here at the top of the screen, you'll see a little back button. If you click on that back button, this is where you will see all your controllers and can add new ones and access settings at the bottom. Clicking on your controller, it will first bring you to the Home tab. The Home tab shows you a overall view of the weather of the past days, what the highs and lows were, what amounts of rain were recorded depending upon what weather station you've connected to, and then a prediction of the forecast ahead showing you the chance of rain and what the weather and temperatures will be like. So this is especially helpful if you're trying to gauge like setting up a watering schedule or wanting to be able to go in and take a look quickly at the weather in relation to how maybe your Rachio 3 controller has worked. If we go down the page here a little bit, you'll see that we have just some getting started things about like lawn smarts, smart watering, some stuff on seeding and controlling weeds, and doing like a yearly yard audit. I won't go too much into this. These again are just kind of tips that Rachio provides you as being a member and a buyer, that is, of the Rachio 3 system. So the next tab at the bottom is the Zones tab. Now the Zones tab shows you, you guessed it, the zones in your controller. So for instance, I only have 2 zones. I live on a super small residential lot, but a lot of people that I've known have, for example, had way more zones than this. So that's the nice thing with the Rachio system, is that you can actually get the Rachio 3 that goes up to 16 zones without having to buy a second controller, that is, which is super nice. So looking at the zones, you'll see that we have my front yard and my backyard. And you'll see below here underneath each zone that there is a soil moisture reading. Now, what does this mean? The soil moisture reading basically takes data from local weather stations and calculates, based on how much rain you've got over the last few days, how moist your soil is and or how dry your soil is, for that matter. So it's super helpful to kind of know. Now, my front yard has a greater slope to it, so this is why it's saying my soil moisture is at 92%. However, my backyard has a soil moisture content of 97 because it's flatter, which makes sense. This also tells you the last time each zone was run. So I haven't run my backyard because the soil moisture has stayed relatively high. Obviously, I live in Oregon. It's almost always raining here in the winter. So I don't hardly ever need to use the watering system, that is, in the winter time. And then the last line here, you'll see that it says what scheduled waterings are upcoming. So right now I have no scheduled upcoming waterings for my lawn. Now, the zones are all the same in the respect of how you set them up, kind of, and what you can go in on the app and look at. So I'm just going to show you my front yard zone in this demonstration here. The backyard is virtually the same setup and it looks very similar. The last thing I want to mention before I move into the front yard zone is the fact that you can take pictures of each of your zones. This comes especially in handy, say, if you have 8 or 10 zones and you're like, I don't remember which zone is side yard A or side yard B. So it's really helpful to have that visualization in the app here. So I want to definitely say kudos to Rachio for thinking of that. It's a very small detail, I know that, but again, I really think that does help make a difference, especially if your system does have a lot of different zones. So jumping into the front yard zone here, you'll see that the zone is enabled. So this means you can enable or disable the zone from watering schedules. Again, this shows you your soil moisture content. If I click on this, it'll actually load up a water journal. The left-hand side shows basically it's been raining the last few days, which has been true, and then the forecast is it to be dry the next few days, so it's going to say, yeah, the soil moisture is going to drop over the upcoming days. There is a more detailed button here that you can actually go in and look at hyper-local data on your actual forecast. So this is, again, this is connected directly to my weather station here. I'm not going to get into the details necessarily on what all of these numbers mean in here, but I just want to show you that there is some really cool analytical things. If you're really a statistical person and want to see all this stuff, it monitors it in the app for you, which is really nice. Going down here, there's the schedules piece, which this shows which schedules. You can set up multiple schedules on your Rachio for each zone. If you wanted to water 3 times a day, you could set, for example, multiple schedules up on that specific zone in the day, or you could spread those different schedules out amongst different zones to have different watering patterns. You can get really creative with this. Again, I really have a basic setup here 2 zones, a front yard and a backyard, nothing really fancy. But if you did have a lot of zones, it's really nice to have that customizability inside the app. If we scroll down the page here, you'll notice that this also shows me my monthly usage and how often I've watered this month on each day in that zone. So for example, I watered 5 minutes on the 24th of April. I bumped up my watering times a little bit last weekend because it wasn't raining at all, so I wanted to give my lawn a little bit more water, and I also put fertilizer on my lawn, so I wanted to make sure that it got the ample water that it would need in order to thrive. I'll actually go back here a couple months on the schedule. I'll actually go back to the last time that I actually used this a lot, which was last August. So the nice thing, this actually shows you a better overview, gives you a little bit better sense of how these statistics work here. So this shows you a really nice overview of, in August, I used the front yard zone 13 hours and 22 minutes. I saved 1 hour and 29 minutes of time based upon smart watering schedules, the actual time that was watered and the scheduled time. So the scheduled time means that this is how often you've set up the schedule to run. And then, for example, if there is if it's going to rain or it's going to be super windy, or if there's other variables in the environment that come up, Rachio makes it really nice in the sense of saying, okay, your front yard was scheduled over the month of August to run 14 hours and 50 minutes, but based upon environmental factors, what did it actually run? And then again, you can see the breakdown of all the run times down here, and you can see here's a couple of days in August, the 21st and 22nd, where it most likely rained or was going to be super windy, and the Rachio system decided that I'm not going to water on this day because of those factors. So it's really nice to be able to have a watering-based system, a watering-based controller that is able to intelligently connect to weather data and be able to analyze, do I need to water today or not? It really does save you a lot of money overall, and I definitely would recommend it. The last thing I want to point out on the Rachio app is the little blue circle down at the bottom that looks like a play button. If you press the little blue circle, it brings up a little run timer here. And what does this do exactly? So this actually goes in and you can set each individual zone to manually run at the present time. So say if I got home and my sprinkler system for some reason didn't water, or I wanted to add additional watering time because say maybe I applied fertilizer to my lawn and I wanted to make sure that got washed in nicely, I could click on the little button down there and then schedule how long do I want to run that zone for and click on the run button. And then the sprinkler system would engage and run in that zone. So it's a super nice feature too, so you can have a lot of override control with the Rachio system. The next tab I want to show you guys is the calendar tab. The calendar tab shows you historical run cycles on your system and also futuristic run cycles that the system thinks it's going to run based upon intelligent weather data. So looking at this, you can see I scrolled back to my August 2019 schedule, and you can see here the month of August. Here are all the days that my schedules ran, which is indicated by the little blue water droplet, and then the little orange water droplet with the cross through it means that it was a water delay. Again, a water delay means if Rachio sees a environmental condition such as rain or extremely windy conditions, you can tell it to do this on a schedule by schedule basis as well, that it will not run on those days in those zones. So for example, the 21st and 22nd of August, it did not run the zone in the front yard. If I click on those days, it'll tell me why it didn't run. It said it skipped because it predicted that there's going to be 0.3 inches of precipitation and it exceeded the threshold of needing to water. So it's again super nice to be able to have that hyper local weather data, so you're able to actually save a lot of money on your lawn watering experience. The fourth tab I'm going to talk about is the Rachio Thrive tab. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I did touch base on this earlier in this video about what Rachio Thrive is. If you want, I will put a timestamp up at the top of this video if you want to rewind to that and listen to that segment again. But if you click on the Rachio Thrive tab, you'll see this guy watering his lawn with the Rachio Thrive set and kind of showing you an overview of what the box you'll receive is and what's in the box. And it just kind of gives you some overall advertising, I guess, on the Rachio Thrive system. You can learn more on their website. And if you actually do wind up ordering the Rachio Thrive system, this is where you'd come in and actually enter the code that they provide you by clicking on enter code. Entering the activation code will make it so that that specific watering kit that was sent to you from Rachio actually gets paired with your controller, so then they can basically talk or virtually talk to each other in that sense. I'm not going to get into the Rachio Thrive system as I mentioned in this video because it is a newer system and I don't really have a need for it right now. Finally, the last tab I want to touch base on, which has a lot of additional things in it, is the More tab. Now the More tab, if we click on it, it shows me some additional things. So the first thing I want to touch base on is up at the top, this little slider that says standby mode. What standby mode means is, like in the winter months when you shut your sprinkler system down, if you live in a colder climate like we do, you can click standby mode on. That will basically disable all watering schedules. It'll override everything in your system and make sure that it doesn't run when your water supply is turned off to the actual controller. Moving down the list, I want to show you the Schedules tab next. This is where you can go in and set up new schedules. And I'm actually going to show you guys how to go in and set up a new schedule and walk you through step by step on how to do that. So to add a new schedule to your system, click on the More tab at the bottom and click on the Schedules tab underneath there. Then you'll notice all your schedules are listed under here as already set up. But if you want to add a new schedule, go ahead and click on the Add Schedule button and it will ask you these questions here. There are three options. There is a fixed option, flex monthly, and flex daily. Now what I want to describe to you guys on these is what does each of these things mean. So the first one means that this is super predictable, right? Fixed schedule. So this means if I want to water, say, a garden or a flower bed on a fixed schedule, meaning I want to run it for 15 minutes a day, every day between these dates, that would be a fixed schedule. The next type of schedule planning down here is flex monthly. This means that it's a smart and predictable schedule. It uses the weather data that I mentioned before to help predict the weather and help forecast on the days it needs to water and not water. Watering frequency and duration are automatically updated every month, so you do get a fairly good watering plan if you do set up a flex monthly schedule. I also want to mention here, this is an important part, the difference between the Rachio 3E and the 3 controller is the 3E ends right here. It should only have these two options here. The flex daily is a limitation that the 3E does not have. So if you want the hyper-local weather data and to be able to have your Rachio system intelligently shift your schedules on a daily basis, then that's what the flex daily means here at the bottom. So again, if you don't care about that, the 3E would probably be fine for you. If you do care about that, definitely go with the 3 if you want to have more accurate watering schedules and also to be able to possibly save a little bit more money in the long run. So flex daily, as I mentioned before, is expert watering. So the zones are watered independently based on the weather zone settings and the frequency changes dynamically from day to day. So this does require advanced zone configuration, but again, is it worth it? I wouldn't say necessarily so. Maybe if you're in a drought climate, like in a desert or something, and you have really tight watering restrictions, or if you live in California, for instance, where they have all kinds of water problems, it might definitely be worth it then to set up a flex daily schedule. I usually have flex monthly schedules set up because it's good enough for my yard and I can still customize the schedule based upon what I want. For this, I'm going to click on the flex monthly schedule since again, this pertains to the 3 and the 3E controller and it'll be easier for you guys to follow along with. The next screen here tells you which zones do you want to include in this schedule. So for instance, if I only wanted to say include this schedule in the front zone, I could uncheck the backyard and this would just be a front zone only schedule, that is. If we go ahead and click next here, you can name your schedule. So I'm just gonna type in front lawn schedule. Whoops. And click on done and click next. And then what this is going to ask you is which days are you permitted to water. So as I mentioned before, if you're in a drought climate or if you have a climate that has watering restrictions, this is where you can set that up in the app. So in my climate, I don't have any sort of watering restrictions, but you can go in here and choose if you want to water on specific days or even odd intervals. But for my instance, I'm going to click on any days and click on next. The next part is, when do you want to water? When do you want the schedule to run? So what I always advise doing here is make sure that you either say start my schedule after sunset or finish it before sunrise. This is the most optimal time. It's been scientifically proven that this is the most optimal time of the day to water because A, the sun isn't out, it's not going to evaporate the water as much, it has more time to soak in, it's cooler, so most likely your plants and lawn will thank you in the long run, and so will your water bill. What I usually like doing is say I'm going to end before sunrise, and then go ahead and click next. Now what this is going to ask me is, what dates do I want to start and stop this schedule? So for instance, I could start, by default it has it set to start today and end never. If I wanted to say I want to start this schedule May 1st, which is this Friday, and then end my schedule on June 1st. So I just went in and set up a 1 month schedule on the monthly schedule plan that will water starting May 1st going through June 1st. If I click on next, this is the next part of the app that I want to talk about a little bit. This is called a smart cycle. Now what does smart cycle mean? Smart cycle means that it will actually alternate the zones and how it waters. So Smart Cycle helps preventing runoff by breaking up the watering times on your schedule. So for instance, this example shows it really well. Say zone 1 is my front yard and zone 2 is my backyard. In this example, it shows us that it will water from 5 to 5:15 in my front yard, and then it will turn my sprinkler system off in the front zone and turn it on in the back zone at 5:15 to allow 15 minutes for that water to soak into the ground. Then at 6 a.m. it will come back on in the front zone, turn my back zone off for soaking in, and then at 6:15 it will turn my back zone on and my front zone off. So this is a really nice feature that they have in here. So it kind of, think of it like a teeter-totter. I'm gonna water my front zone, I'm gonna water my back zone, front and then back. That way it allows for adequate water soaking into your soil and you don't get a flooded yard, for instance, especially if you have super clayey soil like I do in my house. Once you select if you want to use the Smart Cycle, I'm going to, in this case, you're gonna go ahead and click next. And then this is when you get to choose what type of weather intelligence you want Rachio to use. So for example, there's a rain skip, freeze skip, wind skip, and saturation skip. So if any of these conditions are true, it is going to automatically say, okay, I'm not going to run this specific watering schedule at this specific date because one of these conditions are true. Rain skip means that rain is predicted in the forecast. Freeze skip means if the temperature is going to drop between 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind skip means if the winds are going to be super windy outside, I believe it's over 15 or 20 miles an hour, it will skip watering. That way you don't get a bunch of just water spray and you don't get adequate watering on your lawn that way. And the last thing is the saturation skip, meaning if Rachio thinks that it has enough saturation in your soil, it will skip watering based on prior days it had rained in the last few days. For example, like I showed you earlier on in this video. We're gonna go ahead and just leave all of those on here for this example and click on next. So what the app is now gonna tell us is it's gonna say, based upon what you've just told me, this is what I recommend watering this front zone for. However, it is nice because I still think that it does kind of over exaggerate on how long you do need to water. So for example, if I don't agree with this, I can actually just go in here and mark down the time. So say if I don't agree with 45 minutes. What if I say, I'm just gonna set it to 25 minutes for this example? That to me makes more sense. But again, Rachio uses a lot of analytics and weather data to try to base its watering schedule the best on. And again, you don't have to necessarily go with what the app asks or tells you it wants to do. You can go in here and manually override those things. So for example, I'm only gonna use 25 minutes. Click on next and it's gonna create my schedule for me. I can go ahead and click done, and then there is my front lawn schedule. I can go into it and look through all the settings and adjust as necessary. The next piece inside of the More tab is the History tab. What the History tab shows is basically, you guessed it, the history of when your schedules ran in what zones, and just basically gives you a whole complete history of when things actually ran. You can see specific details of how long things ran for and what times they ran. The next thing I want to talk about is shared access to your system. What does shared access mean? This means if you want to grant additional people access to be able to change or manipulate your watering schedules, say if you have a landscaping company and you don't want to necessarily have to take care of Rachio or the Rachio app, or if you have a neighbor that can help take care of the app for you, this is where you can go in and change that. So if I click on shared access, I can actually add additional email addresses in here where they will give them a unique link to download the app and provide them access to my system to be able to help control the system on schedules and waterings. The next thing inside the More tab is the Usage tab. The Usage tab basically just shows you usage to date, and it shows me overall, again, an overall view of all of my zones and all of my schedules combined together. How much time did my system run during these months? So if I, for example, go back to like August, it will tell me this is how long I've used my system overall. This is how much time Weather Intelligence saved me. This is how many times the Weather Intelligence skipped watering, and then it breaks everything down by zone and then more granularly below by date. The last few things I want to talk about in the app before I get to some pros and cons of what the system has is the Account tab and then also the controller settings. If we go into the Account tab, you can update your profile, change notifications, how they are received on your phone or via email, measurement units, what measurements you're using, either English or metric, and then also usage units. Going down to controller settings, this is where you can go in and change the name and location. If you want Weather Intelligence Plus turned on, if you have any accessories with your system, and then you can also go in and configure the brightness of how bright you want your controller to show up, the LEDs, and then also some other advanced things in here like HomeKit, and also if you want to connect to a different Wi-Fi network. And finally, down here at the bottom in the app, you'll see a help center. This will take you out to Rachio's website and community to be able to get help on the Rachio product itself if you have any issues with it. Now I'm showing you guys what the app is capable of doing. I want to touch base on some pros and cons of the Rachio system overall and give my final thoughts on it. So the first thing I want to talk about are some pros of the system. So the nice thing with the Rachio system is, say if you have to install it outside, what do I do in that case? So Rachio does sell a waterproof enclosure for $29.99 on their website, where if you, for instance, have all your water and pipes outside, you don't have it hardwired inside of like a garage or a shed, you can easily install the Rachio waterproof enclosure. That way you know your controller isn't going to malfunction. The next thing I want to say about the Rachio system overall is the fact that it's super easy to set up. It has super clear instructions right out of the box with the quick start guide, and overall it does not take much time or much know-how or knowledge, that is, to set up the controller. This makes it super nice for people that aren't super experienced with installing electrical components or smart home technologies. Speaking of smart home capabilities, another thing I really love about the Rachio system is the fact that it has so many devices it can work with and integrate well with. Some of these devices include Nest thermostats, Amazon Alexas, I can't say her name, otherwise I'll activate her in my room here. Apple HomeKit integration is super nice, Google Assistant, Google Smart Products, and also IFTTT compliant products are all compatible with the Rachio line of products. Another pro to the Rachio lineup that I see is the fact that you can add shared access, meaning you can let other people control or help control your system. Say if you're away or if you have a landscaping company that might be able to help configure your system better, you can easily go in and add those people's email addresses into the app to give them access to your system. Another thing about the Rachio system is the affordability that I really love. The fact that the prices only start at $149 for the Rachio 3E and go up to the $279 mark, all keeping these smart controllers under $300 is really awesome. Now, I do want to touch base on something else that's really cool about the Rachio system, and that's the fact that if you live in a drought-prone climate or in a big city, for instance, there are rebates actually available through many government entities. So for example, if you live up in Portland or live in Central Oregon, just giving a few examples here, you can save or get a rebate of anywhere from $100 to $150 in some cases on the Rachio system, which basically if you had like $150 or $125 rebate, that would virtually make the Rachio 3E system completely free for you. The last pro I want to mention about the Rachio system of products is the fact that it is a really well-featured app. So you have weather forecasts, lawn care tips, you have interactive zones with pictures, you have watering schedules, both historical and futuristic watering schedules, you have the built-in calendar and so many more features, such as things I mentioned before, like you can give shared access to your system, and you have access to a lot of other capabilities through the app itself. So overall, I think Rachio did a really good job at giving a lot of features to the end user to be able to use and utilize with their smart controller system. The last thing I want to touch base on today with the Rachio series of products before I wrap up here are a few cons. Now, I really had to dig deep into the app and think back in my mind, like when I was installing the system and everything, what were some things that I would like to see improved on the system overall. So the first thing I want to mention here is the fact that the app does have a lot of features, which can be daunting or overwhelming in some cases to users that might not have a lot of experience using apps or smart home technologies. So in my mind, there is a fairly big learning curve to the app because it has so many functionalities inside of it. Another thing that is really small in my mind that it's easy to override, that is that I mentioned before earlier on in this video about the Rachio system, is the fact that when you're setting up a new schedule, the fact that when it gets to the end of that schedule, I still think the watering times that it uses or predicts are a little bit too high, at least where I live. That might not be the case for everyone, but you know, watering my front lawn for 45 minutes a day during this time of year based upon weather data, I still think that's a little bit absurd in my mind. Anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes seems much more reasonable to me, but as I mentioned before, that could vary depending upon what part of the country you live in and what kind of environment or environmental factors have to play into your environment. And the last thing that I want to say about, I guess, a small little con that I picked up inside the app, and I don't know if this is done by design or if it's just a small glitch, is the fact when you go in and edit a schedule. So say if I've created a schedule in the Rachio app itself, when I actually go in and edit the schedule, I can't change the schedule type, meaning I can't go between I want this to be a manual schedule or a flex monthly or a flex daily schedule. You actually have to go in and create a whole entirely new schedule and delete the old one. You're not able to go back and easily change or manipulate the schedule type from the schedules menu. And that does it, guys, for my thoughts on the Rachio 3 and the Rachio 3E, both smart sprinkler system controllers from Rachio. Overall, I think it's a really good system, and again, it really depends upon the environment you live in and your budget and what you want to spend. Do I go with the 3? Do I go with the 3E? It really depends upon how many zones you have in your yard, and also depends upon factors like, do I want hyper-local weather condition reports to be able to help drive my Rachio system, that is, or do I want something that's a little bit more basic, a little bit easier, a little bit less on the statistical side of things, and a little bit more manual control. Those would be advice points that I would give to people looking to buy this system. If you guys like this video, make sure you leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think of the video, or if you've purchased a Rachio in the past or not, or if you have any questions for me to answer. And as always, guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button up top, click the bell for notifications, and we'll see you next time in another Love Tech video.